Wow, 3D animation came a long way in 14 years. I think there's a certain set of character traits that we've come to accept as basic, immutable facts about Iron Man. He's rich, got daddy issues, he needs to lay off the sauce, and he's like 45 years old. But what if there was a version of him that couldn't buy alcohol? This is the saga of teenage Tony Stark and his Spider-Man-esque status quo. Iron Man Armored Shenanigans is an animated series produced by a French animation studio in conjunction with Marvel Entertainment. I've always been fascinated by how this show even existed in the first place. It always sounded to me like an idea that got pitched but never made it to production. But no, this has 52 episodes. For those of you who grew up exclusively in the brutalist era of streaming television, let's take it back to the olden days of cable. Back in the day, part of marketing a new movie project based on a superhero property always involved creating an animated series on television to coincide with its release. Keeps the characters fresh in the mind of younger viewers, helps to generate double the merchandise, and provides something for the fans to watch at home while waiting multiple years between sequels for the films. This was pretty standard practice before the streaming era and led to a lot of great animated superhero shows that are just as beloved and well known as the movies they were supposed to market. Stuff like Batman the Animated Series running concurrently with the Batman films of the late 80s through the mid-90s. X-Men Evolution came out the same year as the first X-Men film, despite aging down the characters and telling a pretty different story than those films. Hey, maybe that'll be relevant. And then, of course, Spider-Man is no stranger to this trend. And somehow each movie in the Dark Knight trilogy managed to spawn a different Batman cartoon because they were so spaced out. Given that Iron Man was shaping up to be a blockbuster hit that would end up launching a 2-decade-long franchise, making Robert Downey Jr. the highest-paid actor in the known or unknown multiverse, it was only natural there'd be a cartoon to run alongside the franchise. And there was, but it didn't really resemble the movies the way these shows generally do. Sometimes you used to get things like Spider-Man the New Animated Series, which tried to serve as a midquel to the Raimi trilogy between movies, with what was intended to be extremely similar versions of the characters, and the accepted understanding was that the events of the first movie happened to these characters before the series started. You also got stuff like Batman the Animated Series changing character designs to match their movie counterparts a little more closely for some brand synergy, or even some shows going so far as to cast soundalikes to make the character feel just like the actor in the movie, despite this obviously being a different continuity. And yet, Iron Man Armored Core did none of this. Sure, it shares characters with the Iron Man films, but they don't really look or sound similar at all outside of a shared resemblance to their comic counterparts. And the series portrays Tony Stark as being at least 25 years younger than we're used to seeing him. Armored Adventures stands out among a lot of superhero cartoons for taking a major risk and not copying the cinematic version of its main character really at all. And I think that's what I find so fascinating about it, other than just, yeah, it's a pretty good series. So let's dive in!
You're welcome, Mr. Stark. I'm just your friendly neighborhood, armored hero.
After losing Stark Industries, Tony Stark spends a lot of time playing handheld games and sulking. But what if he could make money and play games? What if you could too? That's why you should check out today's sponsor, Free Cash. Free Cash is a loyalty reward platform where users from all over the world can sign up for free and make money online by playing mobile games from different categories. I'm surprised too, but this is totally legit. Free Cash has 4.7 stars with over 250,000 reviews on Trustpilot. You just log in, look through the Discovery tab where you can see what games are available and how much they're offering. Then you go to your offers to check what games you've been playing and your progress on rewards. Be sure to turn on that app tracking so Free Cash can reward you for your progress on games. You just play for a little while and earn. You can cash out and get your rewards through PayPal, Venmo, Google Play, Amazon, or even a bank transfer. For example, I chose this game Puzzle Chaos for some good old-fashioned brain teasers. I earned coins for finishing a few rounds that earned real money that I transferred into my PayPal account. Depending on your country, the interface may look a little different, but the rewards still function the same. I also made a few in-app purchases that help me progress further and get cash back too. There's even a referral code in the platform, so if someone you know registers with your referral link, you can make extra money on top of your game earnings. Want to make a little extra money on the side just by doing something as simple as playing games? Then use my link in the description or scan my QR code to check out Free Cash and you get a $10 bonus on your first offer. Now back to the video.
Iron Man Armored Adventures, Saturdays, 9 a.m.
Released in 2009, I caught the series as a kid on Nicktoons and was immediately weirded out by the fact that this version of Iron Man had more in common with Peter Parker than the movie I had seen the year prior. Instead of being a mid-40s alcoholic womanizer billionaire weapons manufacturer who kinda hates his absentee father, Tony Stark is a 16-year-old gifted high school student who has a decent relationship with his dad. He still comes from a background of money, with his father being the wealthy owner of Stark International, a company that once produced weapons for the US military. However, young Tony inspires his father to shift the company to more humanitarian efforts and use his genius intellect to produce inventions that help people rather than hurt them. Their different aspirations about the future of the company become a moot point when Tony and Howard Stark's private jet is blasted out of the sky by an unknown assailant, leading to Howard's disappearance and Tony having a permanent heart condition that he manages with self-designed technology. Also, he built the Iron Man armor just kind of for fun before any of that happened, which I do find kind of odd. This is such an insane sci-fi gadget to build just for no real reason. He wasn't under duress trying to escape captivity in a war-torn country. He was just like, hey, you know what'd be cool? Power armor that could withstand a missile blast and give me the strength of 1,000 men. And I'll put lasers on it and make it fly faster than an F-16. Man, I guess if you actually had the money and knowledge to build that, why not? Either way, Tony's been ousted from the company after the incident because he's still a minor, with it being taken over by a shady business partner who looks nothing like Jeff Bridges.
Look what Stain's doing with my dad's company. At this rate, he'll ruin it by the time I turn 18.
It was an interesting choice to have Tony come from a background of money, but then take it away from him abruptly, so he has to be humbled by living a more modest life. Now he lives with his best friend James Rhodes and his mom, who has taken Tony in as his legal guardian until he turns 18 and gets the company back.
You have to learn to have a normal life, Tony, with balance.
This is what your father wanted, Tony. He wanted you living with the Rhodes, going to school, being a normal kid.
So he's sleeping in a modest house, eating TV dinners like the rest of us, and having to attend a regular high school in Manhattan. Leads to some nice character conflicts with him coming from this pampered and comfortable life to suddenly having to live among the lower middle class and experience the world from their perspective.
Why would my dad want me to go to school? It doesn't make sense. I mean, he taught me everything I need.
Oops.
You know, maybe I should give this a try.
Tony's certainly not a snob because he was rich, but this status quo gives him a more down-to-earth outlook that keeps him humble as a hero and eventually as a CEO. This version of Tony naturally has a lot less baggage than most of his counterparts because he's still an innocent kid. He hasn't spent decades profiting off war, womanizing, or just being a general douchebag, so it's really easy to root for him right off the bat. Older Iron Men are more about redemption, while as this one starts out very pure of heart from the get. But Tony's not content with just waiting for the next 2 years until he gets his money back. He has a limited trust fund and access to a defunct Stark factory where he secretly houses, maintains, and upgrades his armor. Every cent he gets goes straight to components and systems for the suits and nothing else, so his setup as an Iron Man is a lot more scrappy and cobbled together, but he has just enough resources available to be a superhero.
Stain is turning my dad's company into something evil, Rhodey. Should I hang out and have fun while my dad's life's work is destroyed? My dad always wanted to use technology to help people, and that's what I'm gonna do. That's what Iron Man will do. I'm gonna save Stark International from itself.
He's going to use the Iron Man armor to investigate the attack on his father's plane, spy on the evil new heads of his company, and fight criminals who are using similar armor technology to endanger the public. He's also backed up by his two best friends and secret identity confidants, James Rhodes and Pepper Potts, who were changed from Stark Industries employees to fellow high school students.
That's what I was trying to tell you on the plane. I'm Iron Man.
I feel like this younger Tony was probably a big inspiration for the recent Ultimate Iron Man, who was portrayed also as a teenager, so maybe the idea has some legs and will pop up again from time to time. This is certainly a pretty big departure from the Iron Man of the MCU, but also from the one in the comics as well. Classic Iron Man books are steeped in Cold War-era politics, with Iron Man battling Russian spies and asserting American dominance over those evil commies. Tony Stark is a capitalist weapons manufacturer who woos beautiful women, fights for American interests against foreign invaders and international villains, and he's got a gadget for everything. He's kind of like an American James Bond, but instead of a silenced pistol, his signature weapon is a lightweight, ultra-durable, collapsible power armor. Iron Man adaptations need to modernize a lot because the stories aren't inherently timeless like Spider-Man or Fantastic Four. Those can kind of take place whenever, if you make some appropriate minor adjustments. Yeah, just change the rotary phones to smartphones and it pretty much all works. But Tales of Suspense era Iron Man is so much a product of its time. not just stylistically, but also textually. These stories can only really exist in the time period in which they were released, and the passage of time has made basic world building into long past historic events. Now there's no Iron Curtain for Iron Man to face. We now see the Yellow Peril villains based on Fu Manchu or outdated caricatures, and frankly, Stark being a rich weapons manufacturer isn't seen as a noble patriot doing his part for the war effort for our boys overseas. Now we see that guys who build weapons for a living are profiting off of death like vultures. That's why the MCU version had Tony Stark ditch his job as a weapons dealer so much faster, because being in that line of work is pretty decidedly unheroic, and in the comics it took years for Tony's conscience to catch up with him for it. Normally I'm all for hard comic accuracy and trying not to update stuff, but a lot of Iron Man's early stories just don't really work in a contemporary setting, so you have to change things about them. I believe firmly in keep what works, change what doesn't, as a philosophy for adaptations, but Iron Man needs a lot more updating than most comics from that time, so even if Tony Stark himself were more traditional in this series, there's still a lot that would have to change for the series to be in some sort of semblance of modern day. I think they just chose to lean into that with the aesthetics of the series, because this show has a really slick, futuristic look to it that makes all the technology look really sophisticated for 2009. Crimson Dynamo looks like an Apple product. I guess the crimson part is metaphorical.
Do you doubt Von Doom? Of course not.
This gives us an updated take on a lot of classic Iron Man villains who've been reimagined with a slick, high-tech armored look, with a lot more sci-fi twists to their powers and costumes. Tony's not the only guy out there who randomly had the idea to encase himself in a skin-tight bomb-proof airplane, and a big element of the series is making sure that other entities can't replicate his armor for evil purposes. And it sure doesn't stop them from trying, though. This show makes everyone a different flavor of Iron Man to further sell the idea of an arms race to build the best weaponized armor. Sure, it makes Tony's invention a little less special considering so many other guys have a similar rig, but his is still apparently the best and most advanced in the field, which is what gives him such a big advantage. You've got villains like Blizzard, Mr. Fix, Whiplash, Titanium Man, Killer Shrike, Unicorn, Black Knight, and Crimson Dynamo, all wearing metal suits covered in weapons and vying to kill Iron Man and use his armor specs to improve their own. Even this show's version of the Mandarin has his own suit of fancy high-tech armor, which looks so cool. I don't know why this didn't become the default look for the character going forward, because it's a lot more visually interesting than robes and a beard. Spider-Man adaptations always end up just ripping off the cartoons instead of using the comics as source material. Other characters can do it too. The Marvel anime Disc Wars used this Mandarin design, and I love that show. Still haven't figured out a way to put that one out publicly. I haven't forgotten, it's just, I don't know. The show doesn't jump straight into adapting Ironmonger either, which I really respect. And even when he does show up, he's nothing like he was in the movie. I know it may make it seem like the villains are kind of homogenized to make them all more like Iron Man, and they are, but I think there's enough of a unique personality and gimmick to each of these characters that they don't all blend together. But you know, how many Spider-Man villains are mad scientists? And there are still other villains who don't use armor as their power set to mix it up just enough. They did a goth girl gender swap of the Mad Thinker, and she's a student at Tony's school who decided to hook him and his friends up to some saw traps out of jealousy of his intellect. Hey, she reminds me of Christina from Spider-Man the New Animated Series. Like a lot. I really like the character arc of Living Laser, who goes from a street thug who becomes pure energy to a world-conquering maniac to a reluctant ally of Iron Man to being an actual friend.
I don't think he even wanted to hurt anyone. I actually feel bad for him.
Tony tries to help him because his powers apparently affected his mind and made him mentally unstable for his first few appearances. And with some ingenuity, they figure out how to shake him of his plans for world domination and general megalomania, just turn him into a normal guy again. He's actually really chill when they get to know him. I'm a sucker for villains turned allies for the heroes, so this is a cool arc to see play out.
Whole again. Oh, thank you, Tony, for trusting me.
This is why I hate Venom adaptations, kids. Their big standout, of course, is the Mandarin, who has been heavily retooled for this show. In a way, he's almost been split into two separate characters. Teenager Gene Khan is the stepson of the ruthless criminal mastermind that looks more akin to the original Mandarin. He kidnaps and replaces the Mandarin and uses his armor to pose as him. There's an overarching plot through all 52 episodes about Iron Man and friends and Mandarin, competing to all find the 10 Makluan rings. You may know them as Shang-Chi's bracelets. Tony wants to find the rings just to keep them from falling into the wrong hands, but Jean wants to use them to resurrect his mother, who is implied to have been killed by the original Mandarin, and I guess take over the world too, because he thinks it's like his birthright or something. These mystic monasteries hiding the rings are another way they can further remix Iron Man villains by using them as guardians of the temples, which test an explorer's worthiness to obtain the rings. Tony's a good kid, so he passes the test pretty easily because he's pure of heart, but Jean keeps screwing them up because his priorities are too self-serving, so he senses an opportunity. Along the way of Season 1, Jean poses as a friend and ally for the group, but finds himself starting to like their company for real, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when he finally betrays them. And that is some incredible dramatic escalation for this type of show. Though he's a lot less interesting in the bulk of Season 2 because he stopped showing up for most of it in favor of Justin Hammer being the new main antagonist, who's more of just an evil reflection of Tony. And once the cat's out of the bag about Jean being the Mandarin, his character has a lot less to do. He even takes a further back seat in the series finale when all the rings and things come to a head and he's stripped of his powers. But he has some kind of change of heart, implying a character redemption that would have been likely further expanded on had this had a Season 3.
Perhaps I'm not supposed to rule the world. Perhaps I'm supposed to protect it.
As is, he's a really interesting character in Season 1, and then in Season 2 his story just kind of fizzles out, and I wish he was more of a driving force throughout the whole show and the finale.
Where is the armor?
You will have it before daybreak, sir.
I'd better. And I have a new target for you as well.
Iron Man's own suit of armor is portrayed in a pretty unique way. This version of the suit feels lightweight, but also extremely durable.
Now we have to break into it.
His footsteps aren't thunderous. It feels like he's still pretty nimble in this suit instead of just being a walking tank. It's also an interesting wrinkle that teenage Tony is not a particularly skilled fighter at all and loses more fights than he wins. His armor just keeps the fleshy human core safe from being splattered repeatedly, and that's just kind of good enough. He's got a lot of heart and he wants to save the day, but sometimes the only thing that keeps him from getting flattened is just that he built the damn thing so tough. I do think the fight choreography suffers from a lack of imagination at times, though. He isn't as gung-ho about squashing his enemies into red mist with super strength. And even though the suit is outfitted with a billion little Geneva Convention-defying weapons, he rarely uses them effectively. All he ever seems to do is fly and shoot the repulsor blasts out of his chest and hands. Do you know that the circle on the chest in the comics was originally just a spotlight and it didn't have any lasers in it? And it seemed like the repulsors were more magnetic than some kind of laser blast? This old, low-tech analog suit had its charms, though. The idea of the suit being made of a metal that collapses into a small storage space was interesting, even though it's been pretty much abandoned over the years because it stretches the credibility of science a little too far. I just miss when Iron Man armor was more of a Swiss Army gadget that he could do a ton of stuff with before it got whittled down to only the repulsor blasts. He used to have a little device on there for every situation. I guess Stan Lee wanted it to sound high-tech, so he just put the word transistor in front of any random gadget he could think of. And Stark never really seemed to run out of new tricks. Modern Iron Man armor seems to be a lot less versatile, and they only have his suits do something special when they're a dumbass variant action figure suit like aquatic armor or space armor, or the Target-exclusive jungle armor. The 90s cartoon was much worse about that stuff, but Armored Adventures has a little bit of that too. You also don't get the same armor lineage stuff because he's a lot less wishy-washy about the details as his comic counterpart.
Introducing the Iron Man Mark II armor.
He built the red and gold one at the start and only upgraded the suit when it was irreparably damaged. He's not up to Mark 438 like the comic guy.
Charging in progress.
Piece of cake.
One detail I appreciate is that the suit has near constant issues with maintaining power in the series, and that does feel like the classic comics.
Tony, I'm sorry, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's just a reminder alarm. I've got to recharge in an hour or so.
He had to recharge the thing so much, which also meant recharging the chest plate to keep his heart functioning. The biggest hurdle of building all sci-fi technology in real life is just fuel and power, so the MCU movies sidestepped the issue entirely by going with the fictional arc reactor tech, which is like a nuclear reactor the size of a baseball. Teen Tony has no such device, and as such, has some real my web shooters are empty drama injected into the action scenes that add to the stakes and remind you that he's working with a lot less.
Power level at 1%.
Tony, don't! You can't go head to head with him! You're running out of power!
Reserve power failing.
God, I miss analog Iron Man and him not having to talk to a sassy AI chatbot constantly. The only thing about this series that evokes the Iron Man movies are the way they portray the suit's heads-up display and the POV shots inside the helmet. But instead of just a face cam, they take it a step further and show Tony's entire body inside the suit. Which reminds me of some of the old Digimon cartoons I used to watch as a kid. Oh, so this is perfectly reasonable, but this breaks your suspension of disbelief. Shut up!
Oh, I'm awesome, Pepper. I just got the snot beaten out of me by a giant robot from outer space!
It's nice that Pepper and Rhodey are given so much more screen time, even if they're pretty different here. Rhodes isn't a hard-ass military badass yet, but they open the door for him to become that one day.
You decide on where you're going to school yet? I'm thinking either Empire State or the Air Force.
You kids look so different.
I was thinking about growing a beard, but Mom said no.
Virginia...
Patricia Potts, a.k.a.
Patricia Pepper Potts is portrayed not as the reasonable, normal girl who puts up with the boys' shenanigans while rolling her eyes. She's maybe the most chaotic member of the team and has a lot of odd personality quirks. She always gives vibes like she has ADHD, and she has an oddly dark sense of humor.
Pepper, you can't come. We can't team up. You can't have any weapons, especially a tear gas grenade.
But I like that she has so much personality and is such a wild card. A lot of these shows are structured with Hero Boy, his best friend, and the girl that the Hero Boy will inevitably fall in love with, but among that trope, I find she's one of the ones that has the most character outside of being a potential love interest. She's not just the girl. It's crazy that Pepper wasn't even in Iron Man's previous cartoon, considering she was his first love in the comics. Rhodey and Pepper are great side characters, and seeing their relationship with Tony tested by his own wild mood swings and erratic behavior makes for great character work.
You done taking out your frustrations on whatever that was?
They always got his back, even when he doesn't deserve it for being kind of inconsiderate. They challenge him and keep him honest, but they always remain loyal and go to great lengths to support his crusade.
Maybe I've been rushing in, not thinking things through.
It's cool if you tell me I'm right.
You're right, Rhodey.
When he eventually builds armor for both of them, it feels earned and it makes sense instead of just reducing the relatability of the characters. It's not like the 1 in a million shot of getting mutated radioactive spider powers happening to Peter, and then his entire circle of friends over the course of the following 2 semesters at Science Hogwarts. Tony builds these himself and they're wearable by anyone. Why not give his 2 greatest allies a suit?
What?
Well, I figured since you're Iron Man and Rhodey's War Machine, don't you think I should have my very own armor too? I'm still thinking about what to call myself. Ooh, isn't that design the sweetest?
It'll protect them from mortal peril. And if you want to tell solo Iron Man stories, you can just write an excuse for Pepper and Rhodey not being able to suit up because they weren't at the armory or just weren't available for whatever reason. But when you have a show with 15 Spider-Man characters, it's like, where are the other Spider-Man characters? It's not a costume, they're always Spider-Mans now. This show has so much more secret identity drama that makes it such a refreshing change of pace from the MCU Iron Man that popularized the trope of celebrity superheroes with publicly known names. Both come with unique and interesting dramatic stakes, but it's sad that secret identities have become so much less prominent in superhero fiction when they were part of what made them so interesting in the first place. Tony has to go through a lot of crazy bullshit to hide the fact that he's Iron Man, and it's always so exciting when someone finally does discover his identity, because it means that the stakes have gotten so much higher.
I get you're angry, Tony, but it's nothing personal, just business.
Armor defenses penetrated.
5 minutes of power, long enough to tear that mechanical heart I'm grabbing right through your chest.
You're bluffing! You go solid and yank it out, my armor cuts your hand off at the wrist.
As the series progresses, it goes from being relatively standalone to having more and more references and appearances from other Marvel characters.
Looks about as real as the time you saw Thor at the mall.
I did see Thor. He was eating meatballs at the Norwegian food stand.
I guess MIT, because Reed Richards teaches there. That's Captain America! I already sold a dozen new inventions to Pym Industries and the Baxter think tank. Who's taking these supervillains down?
My guess is one of those vigilante hitmen, like the Punisher.
So Matt Murdock has agreed to represent Killer Shrike. So what?
Who's there? Spider-Man!
The Hulk and his never adapted to live-action best pal Rick Jones show up. Tony teams up with a 19-year-old Black Panther. Dr. Doom tries to steal plans for Iron Man's suit, even Magneto shows up to throw around the old shell head. He looks pretty naked without a cape, but I do like his voice and the shadowy look of his mask like X-Men Evolution.
You cannot be that blind. The humans would segregate us, ostracize us, and eventually exterminate us.
He shows up to kidnap a powerful mutant telepath that Tony goes to school with, going by Annie Claremont. Oh, that's cute. But it's pretty obvious what the big twist is at the end of the episode because she's voiced by Venus Terzo, who you may remember as Jean Grey from X-Men Evolution.
My real name.
It's not Annie?
No, it's Jean. Jean Grey.
Hello, Miss Claremont. My name is Professor Charles Xavier.
Hey, my namesake! This is one of my favorite episodes of the show because of how well executed the crossover is. I wouldn't mind if this led to a spin-off X-Men show. Unless we pretend this is a prequel to Evolution and this is how Teen Jean Grey ended up at the school. Wait, no, that doesn't work. This series has a surprisingly faithful adaptation of early Black Widow and Hawkeye, who were a couple and served as antagonists to Iron Man, even though you could tell they both had certain reservations about it, and could become heroes given enough time and patience. I think it's cool seeing and hearing about all these characters, but there's something a little odd about how they're all really comic accurate despite Tony and his friends not being that. I kinda wish this show tried to reinvent other Marvel characters as much as they did for the main cast. The best you get is that T'Challa is younger than usual, but is still pretty much the same character and an adult regardless. I feel like if they had Spider-Man show up in like a proposed season 3 or whatever, he'd just seem really similar to Tony. Oh yeah, I go to the other school 2 blocks that way. If you're gonna change stuff up, go the whole 9 yards, do some absolute universe stuff, and make all the heroes a little different and weird from how you know them. I'd like to see them reimagine more to fit this universe to even further distinguish it from the comics. The move in late 2000s Marvel animation really was just to get some indie rock band to do the theme song. Here's my ranking of those. No, I won't be taking questions. You know, some of this show's score is actually recycled from the 2000s Iron Man animated movie.
This must be the place.
Maybe I should review that, too. Not yet. I'm sad to say the only thing I really don't love about this show is honestly the animation. Some character poses look awkward or unnatural, the motion in fight scenes is a little stiff and lacking in impact, and some things just move slower than I'd like them to. I can see what they're going for, but they don't always pull it off. From an art direction standpoint, Armored Avenger, singular, struggles the same way a lot of 3D animated shows do with limited assets. Iron Man flies through a New York City that always feels empty, passing the same 5 buildings over and over with lifeless streets devoid of cars and civilians. Although in the street-level scenes, they do a decent job most of the time of populating the roads with assets like incidental characters and props, there are times when they cut that corner and New York isn't really bustling with life. The scripts need to keep the characters relegated to the same handful of sets or locations that are easy to model, and I don't really love the character designs. Tony's outfit is kind of plain outside of his panel-lined future pants that he assuredly bought at the same store as Rex Salazar. Rhodey looks like someone gave him a wedgie up above his hoodie and he just left it like that forever. And I find that the character models could use some refining overall. Tony's arms look weirdly small when he's shirtless. Some characters kind of look dead-eyed and expressionless. These character models are definitely higher poly than the ones from, say, Spider-Man the New Animated Series from 5 years prior because of how fast that technology evolved. but the colors are so dull and they aren't as careful about trying to film the models from the best perspectives. Some angles make the character models look really unflattering or kind of plasticky. Spidey's CGI series from around this time had a lot of these same problems with visuals, but I found that they at least had the fluidity of movement sorted out, so the action scenes were incredibly well staged, and the character animation looked a little more natural during dialogue scenes because they were motion captured instead of keyframed. I think these civilian character designs would probably have looked more appealing in 2D, honestly. The show could have been like one of those French pseudo-anime like Martin Mystery or Totally Spies, but with less bondage fetish stuff. Though the mechanical armored characters and costumes could only really be as detailed as they are in 3D. So those took precedent because this is an action cartoon. You could not draw this War Machine design walking down the street in traditional animation, let alone fighting an equally detailed metal monstrosity. Well, honestly, they could barely make him walk either way. Regardless, all the robot aesthetic junk does benefit from this animation style, even if the human half of the show looks a little wonky at times. That's the trade-off, I suppose. Overall, on my rewatch of Armored Adventures, I started to really feel the show's length. Even though I tried to space out the episodes enough to not get sick of it. But even then, I wasn't as sucked into the series as I would be with some other shows in the genre that are even longer. Sometimes it can feel a little dry, the episode formula can start to feel a little repetitive, and the limited amount of sets, characters, and locations probably has something to do with the fatigue I felt watching it. It still has its strengths, and I wouldn't mind revisiting it once again in another few years if I skipped over a bunch of episodes just to get to the ones that are more interesting. You got episodes that advance the plot, episodes that build the characters, and then episodes where nothing really all that compelling happens because the season is 26 episodes long and they can't all be winners. With a 2D show, there's just more visual variety that can carry a long season like that with less issues. But 3D animated shows tend to run out of steam quickly when you're watching a lot of episodes back to back because there's only so many times you can watch the Ninja Turtles fight the Krang in the same room.
What is that thing? It sure doesn't look like the SHIELD Helicarrier 2.0.
In the series finale, the originators of the Makluan rings return to Earth, which is a race of crazy alien space dragon conquerors. Like Fin Fang Foom, you know him. This leads to a big Avengers-style crossover where S.H.I.E.L.D., the Iron Fellas, Hulk, Black Panther, Hawkeye, and Black Widow all team up to save the day. This is a really shitty Avengers lineup, at the cost of Tony Stark's secret identity finally being made public just as he's turning 18. But hey, he seems pretty at peace with it, and I guess it just further aligns with the idea that the destiny of this Tony Stark is to be more like the one from the comics as he gets older.
If you don't recharge the implant in your heart, it's all over.
I'm fine, Mom.
Powering up. Okay, humor me. Stay in close touch throughout, okay?
You got it, Moms.
Just minus all the daddy issues because he finds out his dad is still alive and he's not a total dick. How nice! His mustache looks like his eyebrows and it bothers me.
This is gonna be a big change in our lives.
For once, things feel good. Hopeful. Like everything's right in the world. Let's just make sure it stays that way.
I often deride comic adaptations for using the excuse that it's a new take on the material as a shield for just adapting it poorly or making the material much more shallow than its roots. You often see movies and games based on comics completely butcher a character, turn them into a shell of themselves with far less personality, more simplified motivations, or just completely different characterization to fit the needs of a shoddy script. And if you criticize that, people online will hit you with the old, "Oh, you just hate new things. You want everything to be the same as the comics over and over." Except they're never the same as the comics. Personally, I think it's frustrating that we see such a low number of truly faithful adaptations of comics, but something like Iron Man Armored Adventures is just as interesting to me too.
You finally did it, didn't you? You put roller skates on the armor.
They're not skates, they're electrostatic energy racers.
The best part about this show is that while they definitely took some major creative liberties with the material, the heart of Iron Man is still there. A tortured genius in a suit that lives with chronic health issues while also trying to use his wealth and intelligence to make the world a better place than he found it. He has a bit of an ego to get over, but he has a shrapnel-filled heart of red and gold. Even if he's younger and the details of his life are different, it still feels like Iron Man at the center of it all, despite those major changes. I would love to see some kind of Armored Adventures reunion special set 16 years later, to show what these characters are like when they finally get into the status quo people come to expect from Iron Man. But alas, I don't think it'll ever get that level of love from a nostalgia standpoint. The fact that Armored Adventures is so different among a sea of Iron Man adaptations all doing bad RDJ impressions is what makes this show a unique watch. I genuinely consider it a new take on the character because the series went out of its way to be different from the comics, and not in a way that seemed disrespectful, pathetically self-conscious, or trying too hard to have mass appeal to the point of the character being a bland and unrecognizable shell of themselves that repeats the same generic character arc over and over, but just trying to create its own world with its own rules, aesthetics, and characters. It's like the ultimate or absolute comic lines, where it's expected to be different as a new universe that could coexist with the old one. If Iron Man ever has his own multiverse variant crossover thing, this Tony Stark should be front and center for that because he would create a really interesting foil to the more standard takes we always see. And in the decades since this show has been released, every adaptation of Iron Man has become extremely homogenous, all trying to look and feel exactly alike to the MCU version with as little variation as possible. So something that's so daringly different is refreshing. I'd love to see another Iron Man movie or cartoon that tries to capture the feel of the comics in a different way. Maybe being set in the 1960s as a spy thriller period piece or something. But this show gets high marks for going its own path the right way, where it's hard to even compare it to the source material because it's so different. We're going to put this in the same category as Toei Spider-Man, which I consider a high compliment. I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribe to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time!